All righty. Okay, we are officially live on YouTube. All right. Let's just wait and see. Cool. All right, we are. We're going to wait for everyone just to jump online. If you're joining us for the first time, we're so grateful that you could be a part of our panel for tonight. Every Sunday night, we do our panels, and the goal is to jump into different topics and discussions to help you and our people who are viewing this grow, gain wisdom, so on and so forth. So I'm just going to stall a little bit longer as people start to jump on. If you are jumping on right now, jump in the chat. Let us know that you're there. Put an emoji of some description. I don't know about you, where you're watching this from, but here in Sydney, it was 28 degrees today. It was beautiful. It was luscious. It is that type of year that we all love. And so you could put a sun emoji, a fire emoji, any of those things. Yes. And if you're in the chat right now and you do enjoy the hot weather, please let us know, because I know heaven's going to be like that. Heaven will be a mild 26 to 28, I believe. Blue skies, tiny bit of rain, maybe at night. That's my definition of heaven's weather report. So I look forward to that. But if you're jumping on, again, let us know that you're there. We'd love to hear from you. We want to engage with the chat as we do every single week on our panels. And so if you're joining us for tonight, the topic we'll reveal the topic in un momento, por favor. But before I do so, I do want to just acknowledge that there's a great deal of sadness for me and many viewers as we enter into this time of the year, because the footy season is coming to an end. Rugby league is coming to an end. Anyone else upset about that who's watching that today? A little bit. My panelists don't care too much about that topic because they're not from Sydney or didn't grow up in the eastern suburbs of Sydney where you care about that stuff. But all the same, it's going to be sad times. The NRL is ending. But all right, here we go. We're going to introduce our panelists for tonight. So all the way from the sunny place of Canberra. That's right. I don't know if it was sunny today or not. I don't know if it ever gets sunny in Canberra. But I'm going to welcome up on my top left, I think it is on the screen here, going to welcome Rebecca Proud. So good to have you with us.
Thank you. So good to be here, James.
Yes, come on. Rebecca and I had met in Melbourne through a great church down there, and now she is ministering in Canberra, doing a great job there in Canberra, because everyone knows that Canberra needs Jesus. Isn't that right?
Amen.
Amen. Yes. Just out of curiosity, what is your favourite part about Canberra?
The lakes. We've got 2 huge lakes and in lockdown at the moment. That's all that we can do, and we're just walking around these lakes. And so I feel like that is my favorite part at the moment. But we're so new. We moved in February, so I still have quite a bit to get to know.
Yes. Well, I love that you stalled a little bit there when you said, "What's your favorite part about Canberra?" No,
I'm still getting used to it.
Slight hesitation. It was like, the lakes. Anyway, well, it's so good to have you on, Rebecca. We're grateful that you take the time out. And then down the bottom here is my good friend Luke Connaughton, who is all the way from Melbourne. Good to have you with us, Luke.
Great to be here. I am a little bit flat today. I'm a big Cats fan, AFL man, and the Cats got absolutely pumped Friday night. I think it was 88 points. So I'm still recovering. There was tears. It was brutal.
There was tears. Well, I don't really pay much attention to AFL, so I'll commiserations. I don't really know much about it, but
you don't care.
Yeah, I don't really care. But just for everyone who's jumping on as well, don't be turned off at the moment by the fact that we are all actually wearing black. This was totally unintentional. We just happened to show up on the Zoom prior to this starting, and like, oh my gosh, you look fantastic. And so we're all wearing black. It wasn't a uniform requirement just for those who are tuning in. So anyways, well, we're gonna get this going with this light question before we jump into our topic and our big questions for tonight. So let's ask you guys, just so people get to know you a little bit as our panelists. The question I want to ask: if you were to have dinner, 2 people are allowed to come to dinner. You're allowed to have someone who is of notoriety, who is now dead from the past, and you're allowed to have someone who is alive of notoriety. who would you have at your dinner table? Who would be those two people from the past, from the present? They've got to be, well-known people, notoriety. So here we go. Let's start with you, Rebecca. Rebecca, who would you have at your dinner party for two?
Definitely the Queen. I've always wanted to meet the Queen. I've contemplated writing to her at one point. So I think I'd have the Queen at my dinner party, and the Apostle Paul, because I feel like I read his letters, but I'm like, I feel like he'd be a really short, intense man, and I just want to meet him. And I feel like I don't know. I think he would shock me. I read his letters, but I'm like, I think in reality, he'd be very different to what I expect.
I think so. I always pictured Paul, if they ever did like a movie about Paul in Hollywood, I reckon Danny DeVito would play a great Paul. You reckon?
Yes.
True.
Yes.
This works. Okay, so you'd have the Queen and Paul the Apostle. Yeah. Lovely. They're your two dinner guests, I should say. Also, down the bottom here, Luke, who would be your dinner guests?
I'm a big sports fan. I like NBA. This answer is probably going to be controversial, polarizing. LeBron James.
Nice. Okay.
Reason being, I think he's a good leader, good family man, obviously a freak athlete, and he knows how to make the mullah. So, he might give me some advice, a few payouts here and there.
Yes.
So LeBron James, dead person, I'd go with a church father. I'm not as spiritual as Beck, so I won't go all the way back to the Bible. We might go John Wesley.
Oh, nice. A little bit with John Wesley and LeBron James. I'd like to see that take place. That would be dynamic. It would be very dynamic. I love it. Oh, so good. Well, there you go. Through your answers, our audience today get to know you a little bit better, and that's nice. That's really nice. It does say a lot about both of you, definitely. So, well, all right, we're going to jump into our panel topic for today. So if you're jumping on, welcome. We're so grateful. Anything that you have, questions you want to ask around this topic, please jump in the chat. We'll do our best to answer them as we go along. But tonight we're going to talk about social media and digital well-being. Social media and digital well-being. This is a big one. How do we navigate it as believers? For those who are watching this, we are Jesus followers, and we want to live a life that reflects him. And this is part of our world, and we want to live that part of our world in a healthy way and in the right way. And so we're going to address different questions around social media and digital well-being, because I think it's so important. Now, catch this before I get started. Statistic I saw recently that the average iPhone user touches their phone 2,617 times a day. Let me just repeat that. The average iPhone user, they're touching their iPhone 2,617 times a day. That is an average user. So that says a lot about what's happening with this little device we call the iPhone, that people are constantly holding on to it. They're constantly engaging with it. Is it healthy? Is it going to benefit our lives, take away from it? These are the questions we want to jump into. And within that, not just the phone or the digital, but obviously things like social media. And social media is so prevalent. For you guys who are panelists, just out of curiosity, again, I'm allowed to ask you this question, Rebecca, as a woman, because you're not old enough yet where this becomes offensive. But how old are you?
I am 33.
33. And Luke, you are?
Same age,
33. So 33. I'm the old man in this one, almost 40. But we lived in a time before, our recent age where social media didn't exist. We grew up in primary school, or maybe even parts of high school, I'd assume for you guys, where you didn't have Instagram, you didn't have any of those types of things. Am I right in saying that for you guys?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
We had MySpace. I think that's what
MySpace
came out in year 10, MySpace.
Yes. MySpace was definitely up there. It was all the rave in the
top 8.
In the 90s for sure, in the early 2000s. So that being said, so we're bombarded by social media, particularly through this digital age. So I want to ask this question. I'm going to start with you, Rebecca, on this one. But the question is this. What do you think the dangers are? We're going to go straight in the deep end straight away, but what do you think the dangers are of social media, in your opinion? What do you think some of the dangers are?
I think at the moment, with what we're living through with the pandemic and so many opinions and so many political opinions, I think a huge danger is that we have so many voices speaking to us. And so already, put social media aside, we've got so many voices. We've got our parents, we've got our co-workers, our boss, like all these different voices. But I think when it comes to social media, everyone has a platform to share their opinion, and it's great. Everyone can do so. But I think even personally for me, I just recently have almost had to put social media aside a little bit, because I remember even saying to my husband, there are so many voices on this platform. And I had to ask myself the question, is God's voice the loudest in my life? And when I'm constantly on social media, his voice drowns out, and I've got all of these other opinions and voices. So I think one of the main dangers is definitely all the opinions and taking it all on board and really having to, strip it away.
Yeah, that's a big one, isn't it? So it's just an excessive amount of opinions. For you, Luke, what do you reckon? What do you think are some of the dangers of social media? Which, before you answer that question, just so you know, if you're jumping on, this is not going to be a bash the social media platform kind of panel. Just so you know, you're like, oh my gosh, I need to delete Instagram. Okay, look, if the Lord tells you, fantastic. But this is not the point. Just so you know, we're just starting there, and we're going to go a bit deeper. Luke, what do you think are some of the dangers of social media?
Yeah, I think a big one is that people can tend to measure their value, their worth by how many likes, followers, shares they get on their social media. Comparison can play into that as well. You can be feeling amazing about yourself until you see what someone else is up to, one of your old friends from school or something. And probably the other one, speaking as a dad with 3 young kids, this is probably the biggest one for me, that there's a danger around living for social media, trying to capture something for social media more than actually embracing the moment you're in and being present with those around you. Social media can take you out of being present with your kids. And yeah,
right. So there's some big kind of concerns up front already. And I think this is interesting to go down that. I look at the dangers of social media in our life right now. And I think one of the biggest ones is distraction. It's the distraction, and then the distraction that also leads to discouragement. I think it's the two Ds of social media, in my opinion, from the negative side, is distraction and discouragement. You can be jumping on there and you just get distracted, again, whether that's in the moment or whether that's just distracting you from, as Jesus followers, from hearing God. Because look, catch this. I think even sometimes you can jump on social media and you can hear other people's journey about faith, which is still awesome, but it can benefit you and enhance you. But there's also, it can take away from the fact that God wants to personally speak to you, right? There's a personal side to that could be missed out, but also the discouragement. Like, I think that's a big one, isn't it? You get so discouraged sometimes when you measure your life against other people, and you see them like, oh my gosh, this is what they're doing. This is what I'm not doing because they're doing this. So let me ask you this then. Let's go to the other side of this, because we will unpackage all of these a bit deeper. But what do you think are some of the benefits? Like, are there benefits to social media? What do you think those benefits are? Luke, give us some thoughts.
Yeah, I would say there's an opportunity to celebrate people. It's probably the biggest one for me. So obviously when it's someone's birthday or an anniversary, we often celebrate them, our partners, loved ones. But also even, just as a pastor, to celebrate people in our church, volunteers. I think it can really encourage someone that may be doing it tough. And if you go out of your way to say not just nice things, but things that are true about them and share that, it can really encourage people. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Rebecca, what do you think? What do you think are some of the benefits of social media?
Yeah, I agree. I think encouragement is a huge one, but also the fact that it is possible to share the gospel online. Like, I always think this, when Jesus said, he's going to return when the gospel has been shared throughout all the nations, the internet has given us that ability to be able to share the gospel and take it to parts of the world that we didn't even think were possible. So even personally for me, I know last year when we first went into lockdown, I really asked myself, well, why am I on social media? And two of the answers that I had was to encourage people, but to also just share my faith with others. And as I started to do that on social media, I was having women from like France and South Africa, all these places, message me or DM me and just ask me questions about Jesus. They weren't Christians. I was able to give them resource. Like I was so blown away by the power of social media and what it is to share our faith online in a genuine way, not in a fake way, but just in a genuine way, applying it to our life. And yeah, there are huge benefits to the internet, online, social media, purely by sharing the gospel in this way.
I think it's big too, because I think often we do bash it a lot, which is, I think there's some times where we need to be more, intentional about how we teach around the negatives of it, but also the benefits that we do get to do that, right? We get to share the gospel. We get to talk and even give people hope. I found that during this time. And my encouragement to people watching this as well is if you're on social media, do your best to as Jesus followers, do your best to make sure your messages are messages of hope. Because everything you're checking from a social media or digital platform, it's like overwhelming, and people are freaking out. They're feeling the weight of the world at the moment, the weight of all the different issues that are going on. So I think using it as an avenue to really promote hope and get hope in people's world. So let me ask you guys this then. Do you believe there is such thing as digital addiction? Digital addiction. Does anyone want to jump in on that one first? Like digital addiction.
I think, look, I'm not a psychologist, so I don't know exactly what it looks like. But even recently, just this little word that's been bouncing around in my spirit is escapism. And I think sometimes on our days off, we tell ourselves, oh, we just need to unwind. And so we binge on Netflix. So we spend a lot of time on a screen. And, I don't know if you guys have ever done this, but if I've spent all day on a screen, even if it's just watching TV shows, I don't feel great the next day or that night. It doesn't actually fuel me. And I know that there are so many statistics talking about getting outside in nature. God speaks to us in nature. It fuels us. It's good for our soul. So I think, I don't know about the addiction side, but I think sometimes we can convince ourselves that it's good for us and it's downtime to watch all of this TV. And absolutely, I love a good movie, but I do think it can become addictive in the sense of we just convince ourselves that it's good. And I don't think it is always good for us to be on it all the time.
Yeah. Is it, let me ask you this then. Do you think, how would you know if you were digitally addicted? What do you reckon that looks like, Luke? How'd you know because most people that have an addiction don't actually, they're not aware that it's addiction until it's way down the track. And someone else probably goes, hey, do you realize you're excessive with this? Or do you realize that this is controlling you? How do you reckon you notice that? Luke, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I know that it's addictive because I feel it, like physically, emotionally. And if you're wondering if there's some addiction there, maybe record how many times you check your social media in even 1 hour or one day. But I don't know if you guys have seen The Social Dilemma, the documentary. Fascinating. So one of the things that blew me away is that not just Instagram, Facebook, but things like Google and all kinds of searches, it's designed in a way to respond to human psychology. It's built in a way that they study human psychology. And the big question they're asking is, how can I get this person to stay in the app? If it's Instagram, how can I get them to keep scrolling on Facebook? So what they do is they know what you like, they know what your values are, so they constantly send you information. So they're trying to addict us. And I'm not being negative about it. It's just the reality. They want us addicted, the people that are creating these apps and these programs. 100%.
Totally. And it's so sneaky as well, because I remember watching that and how it gave the example of, it'll pop up on your phone that you've been tagged in a photo, but it won't show the photo because they know that you want to see the photo you've been tagged in. Is it a good photo? Is it a bad? And so that causes you to go into the app and check. Yeah, very strategic by them.
So true. It's interesting. So I looked into some of that as well, that there is that there's these endorphins that get triggered in our lives through different things that bring us elements of pleasure. And so those endorphins in our brain, so they actually have tracked that when someone gets a like on a phone, it's actually got this sense of, like someone liked it. Someone was interested. And I think everyone watching this, even right now, let's be honest with ourselves. When someone is commenting on your stuff on social media, or the likes are ever increasing, there's a sense of validation that we get from it. And so I think one of the deeper issues can be, not always, but can be, that we actually get addicted, not so much to social media, but we get addicted to social validation. Social validation. So it's like, if I'm lacking validation, or I don't have that in myself, which again, we get from Christ, and we can unpackage that later. But if I don't have that validation, I will look for it in so many different places. Prior to social media, it was many other relationships, right? It was anyone and anything that I can find at work, or I can find it in my friendships, or my girlfriend, my boyfriend, my whatever, my successes. But now it's like, okay, social media gives me a sense of social validation.
Yeah.
And I feel so good because that person did comment, and we've all been there, right? We're like, yeah, I'm getting a few shares on that one. And maybe you guys obviously aren't agreeing with me, so it's only my problem. But you know what I mean?
Luke doesn't get any likes.
No. If I get 3 likes, I'm doing well.
Yeah. And that's from your wife and kids. Yeah. Exactly. But you know, I think that that digital addiction, do you think there's, like, what signs do you see that looking like? If you didn't realize you were digitally addicted, Luke, you said, I guess, check how many times you're checking it. Are there any other kind of red flags that you think would come up if there was an addiction to social media?
I don't know about red flags, but I think a test would be let me try getting off this for a little bit and see how I react. So if it's not really an addiction, then you'd be like, okay, kind of miss it, but whatever. If it is an addiction, you will constantly be wanting to download that up again, get on it. So I think it's even just, with anything, an alcoholic or people that struggle with different addictions, take it away for a little bit and you see the result of that. And then you can tell if there's an addiction or not.
That's such a good point. I think even for people watching this right now, if you don't know if you are addicted or not, hey, abstain from it for a while and see what happens, because you might get, the social media shakes. You might be like, oh my gosh, I've got to get a hold of it again, because there's a lack there, because there was a sense of attachment to that. Someone put in the chat, they said, what boundaries should we have for social media? What boundaries should we have for social media? Luke, any thoughts?
Yeah. So something I started probably 2 years ago now is every single Monday, which is my day off, pastors, so all day Sunday, we've got stuff on. I actually switch my phone off for the whole entire day. Generally turn it back on 6, 7 p.m., see what I need to attend to. But to be honest with you, Monday is by far the best day of my week. And I truly believe one of the biggest reasons is because there's a sense of relief that, hey, my phone's just off. I don't need to take calls, but I also don't need to check social media. I don't need to be going to searching all kinds of things. And in terms of my own well-being, headspace, connecting with family, it's been the best thing I did, just saying no to my phone on Mondays. And like Beck said earlier, in terms of that getting outdoors every Monday, our focus is let's just get outside, beach, mountains, wherever, no phone, and it's gold.
That's so good. What do you reckon, Rebecca? Any thoughts on that? What boundaries would you put in place to create a healthy lifestyle around social media?
It's hard. I think there's social media and then there's the phone itself. So I think for me, one of my struggles was, and we would know this probably as pastors as well, you're constantly getting messages, whether it's through text message, whether it's on Instagram, Facebook, like email, there's so many things. And I remember even last year feeling like I was a slave to my phone. So every time someone contacted me, even if it was through social media, I would feel the need to respond at that moment or, you know, within 5 minutes. And it was awful. It was as if this phone was controlling me. And so a little measure that I put in place, and I don't always stick to it, so I haven't stuck to it in a while, but I try to, is that I almost give myself, outside of emails and work days, I give myself, you know, half an hour to an hour to respond to those a day, or maybe half an hour a day. So I'm not replying straight away to everyone, but there is a certain time in the day where I will reply to all the messages, and people know that they'll hear from me. But just so I feel like, okay, I'm not a slave to the phone. Like this phone serves me. I don't serve the phone. I don't serve social media. So that was just a little boundary that I put in place. But what even Luke said earlier about comparison and different things, I think it's not even so much the boundary of social media, how much we use it. It's just doing heart checks, because when there's comparison, when there's discouragement, when there's all of these things, that's really a reflection of what's going on in here. Because literally the phone itself cannot make you selfish or worried, or, you know, it's just a phone, but it's really what's going on in here. So I think it's spending more time hearing from God and having his voice as the loudest and doing heart checks. And then you'll notice a massive difference when you go on social media. So yeah, they're my two little things.
I love that. Making it work for you. Not you working for it. I think that's such a great point there. Interesting, I think, even for those who are wanting to create greater boundaries around your phone. And what you said, Rebecca, such a good point. It's not just about social media. It's about what is giving us access to it, that social media. But I think even just allowing yourself to not have it on you so frequently is a really healthy boundary. And I think for those who are watching this, there should be times in your day where your phone actually stays in another room. And if you're resting, I don't know if anyone else has done this. Have you been watching a movie and then checking Instagram? It's like, why am I checking my phone when I'm trying to watch something to entertain? Like, and because that, to me, that's a sign of a little bit of a, I wouldn't say an addiction, but it's an unhealthy habit. Yep. It creeps in. And I think that's also a tension we didn't manage here. There's addictions and there's just lifestyle habits that are unhealthy as well. And so I think there's a good time, or a good practice to put in play, is actually put your phone in another room. And if you're, you know, finishing work for the rest of the day, if maybe your phone is a large part of what you do for work, which a lot of everyone's work these days, being at home through lockdowns and where we're currently kind of recording this, but actually put it in another room and have that, okay, I'm not touching it. It's not next to me on the lounge where there's the temptation to pick it up again, so that you are more present in the moments that you're in. And then another side of that would be, I think there should be a day a week that you actually do switch off your phone. Just that's not saith the Lord, but I do think there is a lot of help and benefit to your soul to actually switch off from the thing that is really vying for our attention the most, which is, you know, our phone and social media and those digital platforms. I think take that, a scary thing for some people, right? To switch off their phone for a 24-hour period. It's like, but what what if someone needs to get me? It's like, I'll find you. It's all good. No, they'll track you down if they really need to. If they're friends, they'll know where you live, or if it's that much of an urgent matter. And so even things like that, I think creating those boundaries of, okay, what time of the day do I now put this aside? Because this works for me. I don't work for it. So put it in another part of the room that you're not tempted to touch it, but then also having a day a week. I think they're good health, in my opinion, they're good, healthy boundary points to start with. And don't get overly legalistic about this either. It's like, just start with these things that are going to help you be more present and less caught up in all those other things that social media can create in your mind and your heart, your emotions.
And James as well, sorry, just on that, John Mark Comer, he's a pastor from Portland in America, has some great teachings, some great podcasts on that particular, you know, he will call it the Sabbath, but it's just principles about setting a day aside and putting aside technology. And it's great teaching. Yeah,
so important to do that. Someone mentioned here already, they said they'd recently discovered the screen time function on their phone. And they said it was so good and would recommend it. I think that's another great point, that if you're watching this, just to check, your screen time and go, is this a bit out of whack? And you can do that on your iPhones. It's quite confronting when you do it at first. Look, a question just came in. What could we replace bad social media habits with? What could we replace bad social media habits with? Which I think is a really good question. I can't remember who it was recently. It might have been Simon Sinek or one of those type of people, those type of thinkers. And he talked about retraining your brain. He said when they do downhill skiing through trees or off-track skiing, he said the skiers don't think, don't hit the tree, don't hit the tree. They think instead, like, go through the spaces, because again, what you give your attention to, you'll often be drawn towards. And so I think that's a good question. What could you replace instead of like, okay, I just won't do it. I just won't touch social media. What would you guys suggest would be a good thing to replace a bad social media habit with? Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, I think if you've got interests that you feel a really healthy interests and benefit your life and grow you as a person, being more intentional about those interests. So when you want to grab your phone, check social media. For example, I'm really interested right now in the brain and the mind and learning all about that. So I'll just pick up where I left off. If I've got 5 minutes reading an article or turn on the podcast I'm listening to for 5 minutes, it's talking about the brain. So not replacing it with things that are unhealthy or maybe unhealthy, but going, okay, what do I actually like in life? What am I interested in that could actually build me up?
That's great. That's great. So for you, that's been what, other literature, like edifying literature, I guess you're saying?
Yeah, just with everyone, a lot of people struggling with mental health. I've dived into some Caroline Leaf stuff, podcast books, and I'm finding I'm not doing it now because I have to, but because I'm really enjoying it, learning. So yeah, it's been good.
That's awesome. That's really good. What about you, Rebecca? Any thoughts? Like, what would you replace a bad social media habit with?
I think I agree with Luke in terms of it's going to be different for everyone. Everyone's got different interests. And what did you say, Luke?
I said you always do.
For those that don't know, Luke and I have known each other since we were 12 years old. So if there's any bickering, it's a long time of friends.
Yeah. So good. So yeah, what do you think, Rebecca? What would be replacing? You agree with Luke there?
Yes, I agree with Luke in the sense of writing down things that you love. Like just spend an hour on a Saturday morning and write down, what do I love doing? Like if I could do anything in my spare time. And so I did that a while ago, and I'm creative. So I love trying to paint different things or interior design, or I studied photography originally. And so I got out my camera again. And so that might not be for everyone, but for me, I love doing that. Or reading. Like we forget that we read so much on social media, but just getting a hard copy book in our hands and spending some time learning and reading. So yeah, I would just say spend time writing down what you love doing, and then do the little test, go off social media and see what you find yourself doing.
Wow. Okay, so let's go down this pathway for a moment. Do you think social media can have an effect on your emotional and mental well-being? Do you think it can?
100%.
Absolutely.
So let's elaborate. Like what effects do you think it could have? Let's start, because I think emotional and mental, they both end up feeding into one another, but I think they both can be categorized separately. Well, let's start with emotional. How do you think it affects your emotions? Any thoughts there?
I think what you were saying earlier, James, about needing to feel validated, and when you're not validated by a like or a comment or followers or however you're seeking validation on social media, it can affect you heavily emotionally. And I would say the world's culture is demanding external validation. They accept me for who I am. Everyone has to accept you. It's this external validation that the world is discipling us to think. But as Christians, we know that our validation can only come from God. It's an internal thing. And of course, community and validation is great for us, but ultimately our validation comes from God. So I think it can heavily affect us emotionally if we are listening to the ways of the world and being discipled in that culture rather than kingdom culture.
Wow. Awesome. What do you think, Luke? What do you think emotional effects it could have, social media?
Yeah, I think it's really important that we have emotional rest. And I think what social media can do is, something is a tool if it's sitting there waiting for us to use it. But if it's nagging at us and wooing us to it and almost magnetic, then what it does is it's no longer a tool that's serving us, but it's our master. And I think what it's done to our culture is we now have a culture that rarely switches off emotionally because we're addicted to stimulation. And the stimulation means that your brain and your emotions and your body aren't resting as often as they should. And also your imagination is completely stifled because you don't have enough space in your world to be creative, imagine what's possible.
Shoot. That's a big one, man. And I think we got to pause there for a second, because that's so true. That you said, what was that terminology you just used there? You said we're addicted to what? Stimulation?
Yeah.
I think that's massive, that addiction to stimulation of constantly getting, again, the likes or their engagement. And I think that's a big one, because that is, if you're never switching off to those things, it means that you are running at a pace that's not sustainable on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys, I think I spoke about this in our church some time ago, but I used to fly every now and then on planes, crazy. And, I remember flying internationally, and, I'd get to the other side of the, wherever I'm going to, and you feel the jet lag. And obviously there's time differences, but so on and so forth. It's normal. But someone actually told me the reason why you're mostly jet lagged is not just the time difference, it's because of the noise of the airplane. The noise of the airplane is that humming, that subtle humming that you hear is actually causing your brain activity to never switch off, even when you're sleeping. And so you're actually getting exhausted on the inside. So that's why I bought some noise canceling headphones, because it actually gets rid of that so that you can actually, your brain can rest. And I think in a similar way, social media can do that. If you're always on it, always on your phone, always on something like that, any type of digital platform, it's almost like your brain is like, it can't get off that airplane mode. It's always going. It's always having this constant activity around it, and it's tiring. And I think like emotionally, it's a big one. Another thought before we jump into the mental side is, I think the issue of a superiority complex or an inferiority complex that happen because of social media.
Totally.
Because we look at things and we either feel superior, like, oh my gosh, so much better than them, nailing it, killing it. Right now. So hot right now. I look so good in black. Wait, hold on a sec. Okay. But then you also then have the inferiority complex, which is like, oh my gosh, I wish I was. And that emotionally, that pendulum from inferior to superior is also exhausting to your soul, where you're now comparing, measure. And Paul the Apostle obviously hits that up on many occasions. Like, why those people commend themselves by themselves, or they compare themselves with themselves. He said, that's not healthy. It's not good for your soul. So I think that's a big one to watch out for our listeners and viewers out there. Just be careful that you're not creeping into measuring your life against other people, that it's actually affecting your soul. Let's go into the mental side of it for a second, because obviously there's that emotional side. It can create that. What about mental? Do you think there is a separation between those two? If so, what do you think are some of the side effects of that?
I know a side effect for me, if I am on social media just before I go to sleep. So if I have my phone next to me and I'm like this, and recently it hasn't been social media, it's been this game called Sudoku. Ridiculous. It's just like Tetris. But I will be playing it right before I go to sleep, thinking I'm unwinding, and I'm dreaming of these building blocks, or I'm dreaming of anything that I've just seen before I go to bed. And so I think God wants to give us sleep. And I actually think one of the ways he communicates to us is in dreams. And it's such a special time that he gifts us with, that I think mentally, it can even affect us during our sleep, as you said, with the plane and the noise. Something that I have to do is just switch it off before I go to sleep, even if it's an hour before bed, because I think it can affect us mentally even while we're sleeping.
Wow. So big. Luke, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it leads to being on social media and devices constantly leads to us living on autopilot in our minds. It can numb our minds. And I think this is huge because the Bible calls us to be intentional with our minds. The enemy, he wants to sow lies and deceit. And if we're living on autopilot, what we can do is to begin to receive those lies without even realizing. And our lives generally go in the direction of our strongest thoughts. Yeah. So if you're on autopilot, you'll likely just go wherever your thoughts are taking you, even if they're toxic. But Paul says we need to be intentional with our minds and renew our minds and think about what's good and upright and heavenly. But if your mind is on autopilot and it's numb, you won't do that. You won't live intentionally in your mind.
So let me ask you then, Luke, like how could someone practically do that? So you're saying being intentional with your thoughts. Give someone who's listening or watching this right now and they're like, okay, I want to be, but how? How do I be intentional? What would be your advice to them?
Okay, so real practically, because this is something I'm journeying through now. I actually start each day now, 10 minutes, just quiet silence. It's almost like centering my mind and heart on Christ. But what it does is whatever feel like I've been thinking about a lot in the previous days that may be toxic or unhelpful, I actually ask the Holy Spirit to highlight those things.
Wow.
And then I offload them to the Holy Spirit and ask him to give me new thoughts. So it's just it works for me. It's just a simple step to be intentional around, okay, where's my mind been going the last 24 hours and where do I want it to go today?
That's a great thought. Where do I want it to go? As opposed to, just letting it drift wherever I want, putting some direction on your thought life. That's huge, man. I love that. That being said, let's go into another question here. Obviously social media, just about everyone's on it. Very few people aren't. And as believers, as Jesus followers, in recent times, or it's not even just COVID and all the stuff that's happening now, even prior to that, there is the temptation for commenting and posting and using that platform in ways that probably aren't beneficial or edifying or helpful. But I think one of the things we haven't done too well as the church is actually educated people on, okay, well, what's kosher? What's beneficial? What actually is the way in which we should approach this as Jesus followers? How do we navigate that? So thoughts on that? What do you guys think? Rebecca, I'll start with you on this one. How do you think Christians should navigate social media when it comes to posting and comments? What do you think?
I think asking for wisdom is the first thing. So James 1:5. I think we are a reaction generation. So we just want to react and comment straight away, but actually taking time, even if it's 2 minutes, to ask the Holy Spirit, do you want me to comment on this? Is this wise? If it is, what should I say? So I think really not rushing to answer would be, I think the wise thing to do. And also we've got to know that as Christians, all eyes are on us, not in a self-centered way. But if you were to send an email and forward it to all of your staff, wherever you worked, if you were going to send a mass email, you would really think about how you're going to write that email because it's going to a lot of people. And I think as Christians, are we commenting kindness and encouragement and patience and fruit of the Spirit? I just think we've got to really think about that all eyes are on us. We think it's one little comment, but a lot of people are watching that comment and a lot of people are reading it and they're going to say, oh, that's how Christians talk. Oh, that's how Christians behave. So it's, really acknowledging that it's not just a little private message. When it's public, it is on display, and asking the Holy Spirit, is this wise? Is this a display of Christian character?
That's so big. Luke, what are your thoughts on that? How do you think Christians should navigate social media with comments and posting?
I'm feeling a bit intimidated. She's very spiritual, Rebecca, isn't she?
Yeah.
Very Christ-like.
Yes, I love it.
I think majoring on building up and minoring on fighting your battles through social media. Social media is not a conducive environment to fight battles in a way that's going to be helpful, you generally alienate more people than you win over. So I'd say just primarily encourage you, see it as an opportunity to build people up, use it as an opportunity, encourage, celebrate, build up. If you need to fight a battle or have a confrontational conversation, do it over the phone or face to face. You can pick up tone, you can pick up emotion, and you're more likely to win the person. Whereas social media, you might win the argument, but you'll lose a lot of people.
Yeah.
So big. I think, okay, is there a time where you should speak up on certain issues on social media? What do you guys think? Let me just play that kind of angle for a moment. Do you think are there things we should be talking about? Are there things that we should be, again, yes, there's faith, hope, and love and all that we want to do. Is there certain social issues that we should be talking about? Are there things that we should be addressing using that platform? Yes or no? What do you guys think?
I think yes. I think as Christians, if we just stay silent and don't say anything, then that's not going to help anyone. I think, yeah, again, it's asking God for wisdom, but also in an age where everything is so political, it can be polarizing. There's a lot of different opinions out there. I think something practical that I've had to do, and it's not just spiritual, Luke, but it's asking, knowing that I can back up what I'm saying with scripture. If I'm putting a belief forward, if I am putting a stance forward, is this just political, or can I back this up theologically? And if I can, if there is a scripture or a passage that I really feel that I can talk to someone about it and say, well, this is why I believe it because it's in the Bible, then yes, I think we should. We've got this activism in us, for different issues, and everyone's got a different calling. But I would just say, as long as you can back it up in scripture, not twisting the scriptures, but as long as you can back it up in its right context, then I would personally say go for it.
Interesting. Luke, shaking your head.
Yeah, she nailed it.
I thought there was going to be a rebuttal. I'm like, bring it on.
No.
This is going to be some tension.
No.
But it's face to face, so it's fine.
Is it an opinion or a biblical conviction? I think that's the framework we can filter whatever we want to share through, as Bex so well said. Is it a biblical conviction or an opinion? And I think, James, a really good question to ask is, why do I want to post this? Or why do I feel the need to comment on that? Is it because I genuinely want to be constructive and help society and people? Or is it because I want to be right, or I want to be heard, or I want to feed my own ego? Because I think there's a lot of that going on. And I think if more people approached it with a motivation of building up society in general, things could look slightly different. It's very polarized right now, isn't it? People are literally punching online.
It's so true, isn't it? And I think it's interesting because, I think I've asked myself this question recently. If Jesus had an Instagram account, what would he be posting?
Yeah.
What would he be posting?
Selfies?
What do you guys think? What do you think Jesus would put if he had an Instagram? I know it's a very far out there question, but if he had a Instagram account, what do you think Jesus would be posting and putting on that social media platform?
Anything that produces life. Enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Jesus has come to give life. So I think anything that can lead to life. So I'm not sure what that looked like. It could be a creative post of the Sea of Galilee, who knows? But as long as it leads to life, I think that's what he would be posting. Yeah,
right. Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, I think John 1, he came embodying grace and truth. So I think Jesus, you would see two primary emphasis coming from him. He would stand up for what is true and right, not what is subjectively true, but what is objectively true. But he would also share stories of grace all the time. He would talk about the power of grace and what happens when people truly encounter grace.
Wow. I love that. And the reason why I asked that question, it's like, we're Jesus followers.
Yeah.
And we want to live a life that reflects him and mimics him and, is actually an example of him. So I think it's actually a good filter. If Jesus left me in charge of his Instagram account, Would I be representing him well? Would I actually be posting stuff that is in alignment with him, his heart, his nature? I think I love that both you alluding to that as well, just life-giving and even grace and truth. I think it's very much something that we need to be using our platforms, our social media platforms, to actually getting out there and doing that. Let me ask you this: if there was, because I think when it comes to certain issues that we need to talk about in general as believers, I think there's the big things that Christians should be known as actively speaking up against, or not against, but speaking up in a way that's like, no, we don't believe that. And I think it's things like, racism, sexism, classism, anything that demeans human beings.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we should be speaking up against, or speaking up, having a voice for, because the Bible's very clear on those things, right? Racism, classism, sexism, anything that demeans human beings, we need to be speaking up about that. So how do you think in this current time we use our platforms to actually promote those things? What would you guys do? What would you suggest? Someone's like, I'm really passionate about, because I think a lot of people have, not all, but a lot of people have good intentions, but they just don't know how to articulate or put it out there with things that they're very passionate about on social media. So what would you suggest to them? They're like, but I'm really passionate. You're like, if Martin Luther King Jr. had an Instagram account, we know that he would be speaking about, racial justice. Don't you mean? Like he would have been talking about those things. So
100%.
What's that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. So how would you help someone? Someone's out there going, I'm really passionate about, so how do I use this in a way that is in alignment with Jesus, but is also getting those thoughts out and getting those beliefs out? What do you guys think? Rebecca, what are your thoughts?
I would say before posting on social media, have some conversations one-on-one, because I think it is very easy to go straight for the platform and say, this is what I believe, this is what I stand for. And sometimes when you have the one-on-one conversations, you can hear what the other person is saying, or if there's a different alternative view, and it just helps you be able to gather your thoughts and really articulate what you truly believe. So I know that, seems a little bit off, but I just know even I've got family members that think differently than me. And I love having conversations with them, because it just, it helps me grow a bigger heart, a heart of Christ. And then when I can take it to social media, I almost know what my, not rebuttal, but I just know how to have a further conversation than just the post, if that makes sense.
I love that.
Really training yourself to be able to have conversations, not just a post on a particular issue. So
actually take it to flesh and blood people first, and actually go, hey, am I on the right path? Is that what you mean by that? Like actually,
or just knowing. So if someone has a different point of view, and you share yours, they might say, oh, well, what about this? And you might not agree, but you know how to compassionately answer the question. It equips you. It helps you grow to be able to then go to social media, share your passion, share your beliefs. But I guarantee you will get direct messages of people that might not agree, or they'll have opinions, but you've already equipped yourself to be able to have those conversations as well. Yeah.
That's awesome. So good. Luke, what are your thoughts? How would you help someone? They're in that place, in that position, they want to articulate it.
I think you just said it there, James. I think the articulation of what you're wanting to say is as important as what you want to say. So you could have a really good motive and what you're wanting to stand for is spot on, but if you articulate it poorly, it could do more harm than good. So I would say similar to Beck, if it's a really big issue and it's really important, articulate it as well as you can, rather than posting emotionally in the moment. I'm angry, I'm worked up, this is a big issue, bang. Go, actually, I want this to be constructive. I want it to help. So I'm going to take a bit of time to think through how I want to articulate this, maybe get some input. Pastor James, he's so wise, just get him to give you his feedback, and off you go.
Love it. I think it's some really good advice there for people, because I think there's a lot of people that do have some really well-meaning passion. Like their passions are beautiful. They have a sincere passion to want to see change or see things shift. Unfortunately, social media becomes more of a vent than it becomes you know, I mean, I'm just venting the frustration. I think the difference between passion and anger. So passion in its purest form is actually a form of anger. It's like, I'm really upset about this. And there's anger, and then there's that righteous anger, right? And we got to, okay, is this a righteous anger, or is this me just being angry because I just don't agree? Is it in other words, is it godly? Is it a godly anger that I'm feeling this? So again, is God, is there a righteous anger about, you know, people getting treated poorly? You know, the kids in Africa, or child soldiers, or all these crazy things that are happening in the world still. You know, is there a righteous anger for that? Yes. But I think the difference between anger and passion is that what takes that pure righteous anger and turns it into passion is actually wisdom-based direction. It's wisdom-based direction. So I get that and I channel it into wisdom-based direction. Okay, cool. What can I do about this? Yeah. How can I be a part of the change in this thing? And I think that's big for people right now. Before you post, which I think it's very easy right now for people to have a voice without any responsibility.
Yes. James, sorry, on that, there's a term called Slacktivism, and it's an actual and it means Slack activism. And so it's people that will say that they're passionate about an issue and they post all over social media, this and that. But when it comes to actually helping and actually doing something practically about it, you know, whether that's giving money, prayer, hands-on, whatever it looks like, there'll be none of that. So there's actually a term, and it was created for people in our generation when social media came out, because we can show all this passion, but really, are we taking responsibility for it behind the scenes?
I'm feeling convicted. I feel like it was created for me.
Look, and I think that's huge that we address that, because people want a voice, but they want no responsibility. Again, interesting. I think it was Viktor Frankl when he went to America and he saw the Statue of Liberty for the first time. He was a psychologist who went through the World War II concentration camps as a Jewish man, and he wrote Man's Search for Meaning. Great book, encourage everyone to read it. But when he went to visit America and he saw the Statue of Liberty in New York, he said, on the other side, on the west coast of America, should be a statue of responsibility. You can't have liberty without responsibility. And we need both of those things. And it's the same thing. We have these liberties now of being able to say whatever we want, right? Everyone has a say. Everyone can say whatever they want. Okay, but is there any responsibility behind that? Like your comment that you put up there, is it actually, are you going to take responsibility for that comment? Because it's really easy to shoot, take a shot across the bow at someone that you never know, you never met. And as believers, we're called to love everyone, especially our enemies. Even our enemies on social media, right? Jesus says, bless those who curse you, right? There's a radically different way to approach how we treat people. But I think a big filter is, am I willing to take responsibility for what I'm about to post? Am I willing to take responsibility for what I'm about, not just what I'm about to say, but am I willing to take responsibility for this cause or this belief or whatever I'm putting out there? And I think if that's there, then man, we're going to see a lot more change and a lot less slacktivist, as you said. So true. Well, our time is coming to an end, and it just goes so quickly. You guys have been so amazing here tonight on this topic. If you have one piece of advice for people watching this, that the social media and digital well-being, this has been our whole topic tonight, navigating through that. What's some advice that we'd leave people with who are like, okay, I want to, as a Jesus follower, and if you're not, we're so grateful that you've jumped on this and watched this. And our hope is that you would come to know him, because he is the reason why we do what we do and changes our lives. But what would you give for Jesus followers out there? What advice would you give as just a closing thought? Rebecca, why don't you go first?
I think I mentioned this just at the beginning of the conversation, was just making sure that God has the loudest voice in your life, because on social media, there are so many voices and opinions, and sometimes we can learn from them, but they're not our main meal. Even pastors that are posting different things on social media, it's great, it's encouragement, but that's not our personal time with God. That is not him speaking to us all the time. He can in a moment, but yeah, I would just say continually make sure that from all the voices of the world, God's voice is what you're hearing first. and this is showing my age, but as we talked about before, mimicking Jesus, it's the WWJD bands, the what would Jesus do? Like even if you have to order an old school 90s WWJD band just to wear when you're on social media, that would be my practical advice as well.
So good. So good.
If we all had them on tonight with our black, people would legit think this is a cult.
Yeah, they think, these guys are gone. I love it. What do you think, Luke? What would be your closing piece of advice?
Yeah, I'd say true success is always experienced internally before it's ever experienced externally. And I think a lot of people are wanting to live from the outside in, get everything looking perfect and sorted on the outside, but their soul's not actually doing too well. So when it comes to social media, digital age, if we're prioritizing our soul and internal health and how we're doing where it matters most, then I think the other things take care of themselves.
Wow. That's great, man. What great advice. That's so good, you guys. Thank you so much. And my advice to everyone would be, even that thought I'd leave you with is, if you were in charge of Jesus' Instagram account, posting on his behalf, would you be posting what you're about to post? Or what would you post? Because as Jesus followers, that's who we represent. And our lives are and meant to be a reflection of him. So even just a little filter to pour, posts and different things through comments through, okay, would Jesus do this? Would he respond like this? Again, that ties in with your WWJD. I love that. What WWJP, what would Jesus post? That was so cheesy, but I went for
it. Mic drop.
Yeah, I know. It was a little cheesy. But anyway, guys, we're so grateful that you joined us tonight, for all of those who are viewing this and all the people who will view this after as well. You stumbled across this. We're grateful. Hope this helped you in some way, shape or form. And if it has, my encouragement would be to share this with someone, especially in this social media and digital age. I think there's a lot of great wisdom here that can help people navigate that and handle it well, handle it as Jesus follows in a way that actually isn't detrimental to our soul, but beneficial. So I'd encourage you to share this with those guys. But Rebecca, Luke, thank you so much for being a part of this. You guys are amazing. You dressed great tonight as well, just have to say. That was just the cherry on the cake, that one. But you guys are amazing. So everyone who's joined us, thank you so much. And we look forward to having you on our next discussion. Stay tuned for what that will be. We'll see you soon.
See you guys.
Bye.